want to take a moment and thank our show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic in Oneida, New York, Sutmeyer Law Firm in Oneida, New York, and Native Path Supplements. These are companies we personally use and trust. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic or Sutmeyer Law Firm, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's COMO 15 at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com and receive 15% off all your orders. I also want to remind everyone that if you're enjoying our show, please become a monthly Patreon member. Your donation to our show assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope all of you enjoy. What sparked your interest in the rhythmic gymnastics world and the contortionist world? Like, how did you get started with that and introduced to that world?
So I was born in the Soviet Union, and Russians just love gymnastics and rhythmic gymnastics and ballet, really, to make a blanket statement. But also Soviet families tend to put their children in a lot of activities. So when my family immigrated to the US when I was 3 years old. And so when I came, probably right away, we were put into like swimming and gymnastics and art and piano. So my brother and I did a lot of things, just like for fun. And then slowly, little by little, things kind of dropped off, partially because my parents were like, oh, we're immigrants, this is pretty tough to afford. And then the other part was I just really loved gymnastics and had less interest in the other things compared to gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics. So yeah, even at a young age, I didn't really actually show any promise. The coaches sort of made fun of me because I naturally was just a little bit rounder, and I was in rhythmic gymnastics as opposed to artistic, which is the tumbling kind of gymnastics. It's more of a ballet type body. We're supposed to be tall, long, and lean, and I was literally the opposite of that. I was soft, short, and round. And so the Russian coaches loved to sort of tease me even as a child about that. But I just really, I don't know what it was. I just loved the community. I just really loved it. And I always wanted more. And I kept asking my parents to sign me up for more and more and more, to the point where I was 14 years old and I begged my parents to become homeschooled so that I could do it 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Yeah. And it took a year of begging and begging and begging. And some of the other parents in my gym told my parents, don't do it, she's going to be antisocial, blah, blah, blah. But I just really felt strongly about it. And so I finally got my way. And I was 14. I started training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow. So let's back up. So you said, did you start at 3 years old or 4 years old?
Yeah, I started playing around, I think around 3, 4 years old, but it was very just for fun. I wouldn't say I was training. Yeah.
And then you sort of acquainted as a hobby all the way up till 13, 14 years old, when you really wanted to turn the switch on and go more seriously? Or when did you make that transition?
It got more serious at about 8 years old.
Okay.
And I switched teams to a more serious team. And they train, I went from a couple of days a week, a few hours at a time, to when I was 8, it turned to maybe 4 hours a day, 4 times a week, which is a lot for an 8-year-old.
16 hours a week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say that's when the first switch happened is when I switched to this other team. And then the next major switch was 14, where it was okay, I really do this all day, every day. Yeah.
So your parents made the commitment to homeschool to allow you to train essentially full time. You said 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And at first I was doing this distance program, long distance programming called Keystone National High School. But that was pretty much a self-learning. You just guided yourself and taught yourself all subjects. And that was really hard for me because I was just so exhausted from 8 hours a day of training. I couldn't go home at the end of the day and just teach myself algebra, calculus, or whatever, So then eventually I ended up getting a tutor who just took me through the program. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow. So they knew, you knew that you were on a track to then compete and go big, or attempt to go big in the sport, right? With that kind of dedication.
I think by 14, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like, it was because it was coming from me. My parents never, there's no pressure from them. In fact, they, would say, please, anytime you want to stop, just let us know because this
Sure,
is really expensive.
sure.
And we're immigrants that came here with $100. So please just let us know.
Mhm,
But they also just were really generous in supporting me because it really is a very expensive sport.
mhm.
Um, up to like $60,000 a year for
Oh,
travel,
really?
coaching, equipment. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Holy,
it's really, I have to mention it because in order to, for any athlete probably, but I can definitely say from my experience in rhythmic gymnastics, to achieve success, it's not only your own internal motivation, it's
mhm,
also all these other components, including your parents' ability to finance it and also their willingness.
mhm,
So I
mhm.
was really, really, and now that I'm a mom, I'm like, well, like, wow. Like they like never took a vacation ever. They pretty much did nothing for themselves also that I could do that for 10 over 10 years.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I wanted to make that a point here, to our listeners. At our gym, it's pretty standard to see people work out 45 minutes to an hour at a time, 2 to 3 days a week, right? But you're talking, to reach the high level of success that you did within the sport, you know, at 14, well, first you started at age, 3, 4, and then at 14, you're training what we would consider more than a full-time job, essentially,
yeah,
within that sport. And the financial outlay, and then the homeschool system, really, there's your whole life was made up at that age to
yeah,
make that happen. And so, I hear people all the time saying, like, they wish they could do this in the business world, or they wish within sport, or I wish I
mhm,
could do the, the hours and the time and the years of dedication to get to that one moment or that one competition is, I think, so high level, and such a, it's your entire life, and I just want to
yeah,
point that out to people listening. Like, when you say
yeah,
training 8 hours a day, like you're up and you're in the gym
yeah,
getting warmed up and you're doing
yeah,
routines and like there's a lot
yeah,
to that.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I spent most of my childhood not inside my home, not
Hmm.
with my family, not with my parents. And I don't have any regrets, but looking back, it's like, wow, yeah, like
Hmm.
there. Now that I spend like time, my daughter's only 2, but or almost 2. I'm like, wow, we spent a lot of time at home. Like I've never spent this much time at home before.
Wow. Wow. So
Yeah, yeah,
14, at 14, so you get up at what time? Like, give us I'm very interested,
yeah.
personally, like, what did, because, I love sport, I still train a decent amount, for 39 years old. I love that whole mindset piece and the routine, and like, commitment to that. Like, so you're
Mm-hmm.
14, you get up in the morning, what time? And then, like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the day look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, you probably doesn't matter, but I'm just gonna say like my memory isn't crystal clear, but I do think around training started around 9:30. So I was probably getting up around 8. So not super early. And that's fine for me because I've never been a morning person. I still am not. So sometimes when I hear about, really dedicated athletes and they get up at 4 or 5, 6, I'm like, I guess I'm not one of those.
I'm not either.
Like I've just never in my life, no matter what circumstances I've been under, I've been like, that's not when I function best. So even those morning trainings at 9, they were not my best trainings. They'd be like 4 hours from 9 to 1 or so. Um, and then I'd have like an hour lunch break. There's one other girl on my team who was homeschooled as well. So it was the 2 of us in the morning. And we'd have maybe like 1 or 2 hours of break. And then after school, like 3-ish, like all the people who actually go to school would come in for their evening training, and then we would continue training with them. So we do another 4 hours with them, and then go home and hopefully get some homework done, because that was honestly the biggest struggle, is like after that day to go and start teaching myself, or go and do schoolwork after that. And yeah, so that was 6 days a week. I had Mondays off. And on Mondays, my mother was an acupuncturist, an herbalist, and just big believer in like alternative medicine, would take me to like a Russian bathhouse on my day off and force me to go into the really hot rooms, dip into the ice bath, like do like a full recovery day. And she was very consistent about that. So every Monday, that is what I did. Yeah. Mhm.
Man, yeah, and you need that after that training volume. If your
Yeah.
recovery isn't spot on, you will overtrain and then you will get injured,
Yeah.
and it's like a spiral effect downward, Um, yeah, so schoolwork, like, so you trained all day. How many hours a day were you working on school, like till late at night or?
Yeah, I mean, when I actually went to a school and there was someone like demanding a timeline of me, like in junior high school, I would be up till like 2, 3 in the morning trying to finish everything up because I was so tired. So everything was like moving slowly.
Mhm,
And that was really bad because I did have to get up at 6 for like junior high school. So I was really low on sleep, still training a good amount, like 4 or 5 hours a day.
mhm,
Um, and that was one of the reasons that I wanted to be homeschooled, is I felt that I wasn't getting enough rest. I wasn't doing as well in school as I could be because I'm so tired. Um, but then with homeschooling, this is, kind of a lesson I learned, or one of my disappointments, I would say, is that I didn't find a situation that really worked for me.
mhm,
So I was doing maybe 1, 2 hours if I was lucky of it. And I started falling behind at one point. It became a point of stress for me because I knew my friends who I had at one point had gone to school were moving on, and I was like behind. That's and why I ended up getting a tutor, and I probably finished through, and this haunts me a little bit, through like 10th, 11th grade curriculum, and I ended up getting my GED.
mhm,
Um, but I ended up going to a good university, so I like made up for it.
mhm,
You know,
mhm.
in other ways, but still sometimes like I didn't finish high school. Ah.
I want to take a moment and thank our show sponsors, Lombardi Chiropractic in Oneida, New York, Sutmeyer Law Firm in Oneida, New York, and Native Path Supplements. These are companies we personally use and trust. Mention the Co-Movement Gym podcast when you call Lombardi Chiropractic or Sutmeyer Law Firm, and not only will they treat you like family, they will provide a nice, enticing discount to all listeners. And use code COMO15, that's COMO 15 at checkout when shopping at nativepath.com and receive 15% off all your orders. I also want to remind everyone that if you're enjoying our show, please become a monthly Patreon member. Your donation to our show assists in us paying for expenses and continuing to provide content we hope all of you enjoy.